Okay, welcome to the Marriage Transformation Webinar, How to Transform Your Marriage Even if Your Spouse Refuses to Change. In just a couple of minutes, we're going to get started. I'm glad you came a moment or two early. And please make sure that you're able to hear me. Do me a favor, actually, you'll see on the side, there's a little box and you could just type in, if you're able to hear me clearly, just type a yes in. And also if the video is clear, if you could see me, please put a yes into the box. Okay, good. Thank you. All right, good. And the audio as well. Okay, excellent. Very good. Okay, good. Okay, so again, welcome to the Marriage Transformation Webinar. In just a moment or two, we're going to start. I want you to sort of, if everyone could just, really join. We're going to give a minute or two for everyone to just get online and really get settled. I do have a request before we start. Very important, if possible. The information we're going to discuss today, I believe, is vital. When I say vital, I mean this is life-shaping. This can change literally your marriage, change your life. But it's going to require a little bit of focus and attention. And I know in our world today, that's a little bit kind of iffy. So if I could please ask you, if you have a phone, please shut it off. Notifications on your computer, please shut it off. I hope you're watching this at least on a laptop, preferably on actually a desktop, but certainly not on a phone because the full experience is going to be very difficult on a phone. But again, if I could just ask for your attention. And again, in just a moment or two, we're going to start. Again, welcome to the webinar, the Marriage Transformation Webinar. And at any time during the presentation, please feel free to use the box on the right to ask questions. Likely when I'm speaking, I'm not going to be able to get to it. But certainly afterwards, I'll hopefully get to it. Or even sometimes, after we'll have a Q&A session. And hopefully I'll be able to get to it. So just hopefully we'll be able to do it that way. Okay, so in just one moment we're going to start. And again, welcome. You are in hopefully the right place, the Marriage Transformation Webinar, How to Transform Your Marriage Even if Your Spouse Refuses to Change. Okay, we're just about ready to start now. Okay, first of all, who is this webinar for? If your marriage is good and you just want to make it better, you just want to add some more passion, maybe rekindle a spark, this is the place for you. If your marriage is generally good, but, things keep popping up, issues, things, sort of the bickering, the quarreling, again, this is definitely the place for you. And if your marriage is kind of flat, it's sort of, not much connection, not much passion, kind of like two ships passing in the night, then you definitely want to stick around. And one more thing, if you're not married yet, I still recommend you listen, audit the class, kind of speak, because it will allow you to get a better understanding of marriage in general. Okay, so let me begin. Your marriage is central to your life. It is your key central relationship. This is the person you share your life with. This is the person you go to sleep with at night, get up in the morning with. This is the person with whom you raise your kids. This is the person who hopefully you share your dreams and aspiration with. And this relationship called marriage is going to impact every aspect of your life. If your marriage is good, life is sweet. You may not have much money, you may not have much in terms of material possessions, but there's someone on your side, you have a life partner who's with you, life is good. However, if your marriage isn't good, then you could have everything under the sun. Health, great job, great kids, lots of money and lots of toys, but your life itself is going to be very, very dark. You're going to be lonely, you're going to suffer, you'll poorly perform at work, and more than anything, you're not going to be happy. And really, this is the point. The quality of your marriage is going to impact your life and your happiness probably more than anything else. Other than a serious health issue, this will have a greater impact on everything that you do more than anything. And now you'll excuse me for making two assumptions. Assumption number one is that you are a reasonable, intelligent, thought-out person. Assumption number two is that your spouse as well is a reasonable, intelligent, and thought-out person. And no comments, please, on the side there if you don't agree. So, assuming those two premises are correct, clearly this is something you've thought about. Your marriage, the state of your marriage, how things are, And likely, despite thinking about it, despite reading books about it, maybe even speaking to a Rav, despite many things, many people get stuck. And again, that stuck can mean either you're at a certain plateau in the relationship, or there are issues that are coming up and you just can't resolve them. But there's something going on that you're just not able to change. And there's a cause. And typically, the cause is either you, your spouse, or the issues, right? The issues are the stuff that happens in life, the money, the kids, the discipline, the in-laws, the religion, all that stuff. So what happens is it's either you can't change, your spouse can't change, or the issues aren't going to change, and therefore you're stuck. Your marriage is what it is, and not much you're going to be able to do about it. And I have a very bold statement that I would like to make. All three of those assumptions are incorrect. Number one, you can change. Number two, your spouse can change. And number three, the issues are never the problem. That which people assume is the problem isn't. I believe what really happens is that the method, the way that you work on the marriage, what you should be doing, how you should be doing it, is the issue. It's not you, not your spouse, not the issues. It's the way, the system. And I'm sorry to tell you, most people really don't have a method. Most people kind of wing this thing called marriage. They get married and whatever. And just sort of, whatever happens, happens. What I'm going to share with you today is not some helpful hints about men and women or maybe some techniques to improve your relationship. And not even mussar about the significance of shalom bayis, peace in your home. My goal in this webinar is to present a paradigm shift, a sea change, a radically different approach in the way that you view your relationship, and more importantly, what to do to change it. You see, my goal today is to present to you a fundamental understanding of the mechanics of a successful marriage, a framework to understand why problems arise, and a system to improve a marriage. So I hope you'll stick with me till the end, because I think there's a tremendous amount of information we're going to have here, a tremendous amount of knowledge, and I hope that you'll be able to stay and enjoy and benefit from what we're going to be discussing. Okay, for those who don't know who I am, let me introduce myself. My name is Rabbi Shafier. I'm the founder of the Shmooze, and I've counseled one-on-one hundreds and hundreds of couples. I've also taught thousands of couples in couple classes, weekends, etc. About 7 years ago, I came out with something called the Marriage Seminar. It's a 7-hour comprehensive guide to marriage, and it's been very, very well received in the Jewish nation. You could see here, Mishpacha magazine ran a feature article about it. Marriage therapists have been praising it. Here's a comment by someone who runs a clinic, Dr. Chaim Horowitz, about it. But probably for me personally, one of the most moving compliments that I received about it was I got a phone call from a fellow I hadn't spoken to in a while, and he says, Rabbi, you got to hear. What? I'm taking a master's program in family counseling, and my professor came into class today, and he recommended that all of us listen to the marriage seminar. So I realized at that point that obviously it's clearly been well received. And I would like you to understand that I did not start out to be some kind of marriage guru. My background is very, very different than that. I was a mild-mannered high school Rebbe. In fact, here you can see a picture of me back in the day, maybe a bit younger. I learned in Yeshiva Chavetz Chaim. There's my Rebbe, Rav Henoch Leibowitz Zatzal. And the Yeshiva Zatzal asked me to start an organization. The organization was for the working guy. The Yeshiva Zatzal felt there was nothing out there. These were guys who had learned in Yeshiva. Maybe they learned a tremendous amount, maybe learned very little, but they're in the workforce now, and the Yeshiva Zatzal felt there was no organization, nothing for them. And the Yeshiva asked me to start an organization for them, and that's really how the Shmooze began. The Shmooze really was sort of the lightning rod to bring the Chevra in, and then we had morning kollels, night kollels, and it was a very beautiful group. We also ran Shabbatons for couples and etc. It was a very, very nice group, and this ran for quite a while. And along the way, things started evolving. You see, I was for most of these chevra, I was what they would call the Rebbe, And they came to me with their questions, their issues, life problems, etc. And as they grew older, the problem began getting a little bit deeper and a little bit more problematic. And marriage questions and marriage issues began surfacing on a regular basis. And I found myself in an interesting predicament. Here these people were coming to me as their Rabbi, as the one who's supposed to know all the answers, and I didn't have a clue. Now, I'd been married at the time about 15 years, and Baruch Hashem, happily married. To be honest with you, we both, my wife and I both, we were married, happily married, but neither of us really studied this institution called marriage because, like most people, we just were married, and when things came up, we dealt with it, and Baruch Hashem, things were going along well. But here I was put into the thrust of having to figure out what is going on, and I didn't have a clue. And to be honest with you, it was pretty rough in the beginning, so I took the various couples to marriage counselors, to marriage therapists, and nothing helped. And I very quickly turned from bad to much worse. And to be honest with you, we lost a number of those couples, and it began plaguing me. Because yes, their marriages had failed, but it also meant that I had failed. So I started to read. I started to read as much as I could, as many Svarim Shalom Bayis as I could. I started to read secular books. I read pretty much every popular, well-known secular marriage book. I began consulting with chassan teachers, with Rabbanim. I began doing whatever I could to study and understand this institution called marriage. And I began to see patterns. Now, to be honest with you, couples would come to me then, and I tried different things. Not all of the advice I gave was exactly brilliant, but some things worked and some things didn't, and I slowly started putting together pieces. And after years, and when I say years, I mean 15 years, I think that I now have a system, an understanding of what a marriage needs, how to develop a marriage, and how to recognize the rifts, the problems, the issues, and what to do about it. And what I'd like to present to you today is what I call the marriage transformation system. It's perspectives, understandings, and tools to actually improve a marriage and greatly change it. And really, it starts with a basic understanding of the nature of the relationship. And let me begin with the following. I get a phone call, and the phone call sounds like this. Rabbi, yes. Thank you for taking the call. I greatly appreciate it. It's about my husband. What's up? Well, you see, he's a great guy. Oh, good. And he learns, and he's very responsible, takes care of the kids. I said, so far sounds pretty good. What's the problem? Well, the problem is he's a great guy, but I don't love him. I don't love him. What do I do? Now, to be honest with you, it wasn't the first phone call I got like that. So I asked the question that I always ask when I get that kind of phone call. I said, okay, madam, tell me one thing. Last month, how many times did you and your husband go out? But I mean, not going out to a bar mitzvah or a wedding or to your parents. How many times did you and your husband go out as a couple just to spend time together, just reconnect? She said, we didn't. And I said, okay. The month before that, how many times? Didn't. The month before that? And I went through that exercise that I often go through, and I'd like to share with you one of the fundamental realizations that I came to. Many couples have one flaw in their marriage. They're not working on the relationship. They're not developing it. They're not rekindling it. They're not joining together as husband and wife in a way to bond, to connect. And oftentimes, that is the biggest impediment to success, where the couples become co-managers of the family business, and they share together, much like any business partners, the issues of the family business, but the bonding, the connection isn't there. And I have found this over and over, that couples stop working on the relationship, the bond, the connection. They stop doing the things that a couple in love are supposed to be doing, and then the issues start surfacing. The problems, the complaints, the things that begin eroding the marriage, and then they begin dealing with the issues. They assume that the coming late, or the keeping neat, or the spending too much, or too loud, or too quiet, or whatever the issues are, those are the problems. So they begin working on the problem. And that is the first mistake that many, many couples make. Instead of investing their time in working on the relationship, they allow the relationship to kind of take a back seat. The issues start surfacing, and then they attack the issues, because obviously that's what's causing the problem. 80% of your effort, 80% of your energy should be spent on the relationship, on developing it, bonding, connecting, and but a small, minor percentage on the issues, the problems, the trouble. And this part shouldn't really require that much wisdom and is kind of what I'd call obvious. But it's not so simple, and I'll explain to you why. Shabbos morning, I typically get up early. The house is quiet. It's a pleasure. I learn. And sometime later, I usually bring my wife a cup of coffee. She likes to have a coffee in bed, so I bring her a cup of coffee. To this day, I face the following dilemma. As I'm preparing that cup of coffee for her, I reach into the refrigerator to reach for the creamer, because everyone knows that creamer makes coffee taste much better. And I'm about to reach for the creamer when I say to myself, I can't do that because my wife prefers skim milk. But everyone knows that creamer tastes so much better, thick milk at least, because coffee just tastes much better. And I have to reach for the skim milk because my wife prefers skim milk. And that is a huge lesson in any relationship that you'll ever engage in. We human beings fall prey to judging others by our experience. And more than that, our experience defines reality. If I like vanilla ice cream, then vanilla ice cream tastes good. If I like the color blue, then the color blue is good. And as strange as it sounds, we become blind to the possibility that maybe what I like and the way I like things isn't necessarily the way my spouse does. And I'd like to share with you that this may sound simple, but this impacts every relationship and marriage more than any other one. And I'll share with you exactly what I mean. Let's say you decide, okay, I get it. We got to work on the bond, the connection. I get it. We're supposed to work on the marriage. Now, most women are very, very attuned to the relationship, and they're very aware of what it means. In fact, open almost any women's magazine, you'll see 6 ways to improve your relationship, 4 ways to improve your marriage. Women's magazines have that all the time. So imagine we have a woman who decides, that's it, I'm going to work on the relationship. And she showers her husband with love. And for some reason, he doesn't respond. I don't get it. I showed him how much I love him, and nothing. So she tries again, and again, showers him with love, and again, nothing. And she tries another time, nothing. Another. That's it. It's clear. He doesn't care about me. Doesn't want a relationship. He's obviously a stone wall. And she reaches a conclusion that something's wrong with her husband. The problem is that what she's very likely doing is using her experience to shower her husband with exactly the type of attention that she would want him to shower her with. And I'd just like to share with you, men and women are different, but not casually different, not topically different, not different in some nuances, fundamentally at the core of their essence. And if you find a man who is unhappy in his marriage, and you find a woman who's unhappy in her marriage, I guarantee at the core of their essence, they're going to be singing different songs. Just watch the next time your friend gets into a fight with his or her spouse. The woman will be saying to herself, it's clear he doesn't care about me, he doesn't love me. What's wrong with him? He just doesn't love me. But likely that's not what the guy is going to be saying. What he's going to be saying is a different song. She's so disrespectful. Why doesn't she respect me? Why does she speak I don't speak that way to her. You see, at the core of their essence, men and women are different. But you see, this is not about men and women, because men are different than men. Each person is different than another. As my face is different than your face, your mind is different than my mind, and all human beings are unique. And being mind blind means assuming that my version of reality is the way everyone views it. My experience defines reality. The way I view things is the way everyone views things, and the way I feel is the way everyone feels. And this is one of the greatest trappings in a marriage, because you could have all of the fine intentions and all of the best interests, but if you're not attuned to what your spouse needs, you're going to deliver the wrong antidote, the wrong cure, and you're not going to be helping your marriage. Very likely you're going to be damaging it. Now, by the way, I want you to understand something. In the marriage transformation boot camp, we spend a fortune of time working on what I call tools that bond. Meaning in that relationship, it's not just an issue of going out once a week, which is a great idea, but there are many features to it. In the tools that bond, there's attraction, there's infatuation, there's romantic love, there's touch and physical intimacy, there's respect, there's appreciation, there's friendship. All of these are kind of like a triangle that leads to that ultimate love. But you see, what one person feels as appreciation, another person might not. What one person craves and needs as respect, another one may not be interested in. And here's the great secret. Would you like to know who is the expert, the absolute expert on what your spouse needs? The answer is the only one who's even close is your spouse. So just ask your spouse. Well, that's the problem. It's not always so obvious even to your spouse. And I can't tell you how many times couples come to me and they can't quite define what it is that bothers when she says that, when he says it. It's just, and a big part of the work that we do in the Marriage Transformation Boot Camp, which I'm going to explain to you later, is sort of help a couple identify the core issues. But not so much how I view the world, that's important, but for me to understand how my spouse functions. You see, the first work is for me to understand my core needs and for me to understand what it is that I need. And then for me to be able to transmit that to my spouse. And the third part of that equation is for my spouse to learn to listen. And how many times you have guys or women say the same, she's just carrying on. Yeah. She told you 1,000 times it bothers her. She's just carrying on. Not a big deal. She doesn't really mean that. That's stupid. I'll prove to you, it doesn't bother me. She's just carrying on. And I cannot tell you how many times I have couples in my office, and he'll say clearly what bothers her. He'll say clearly exactly what it is, and she'll say, that's baloney. That's nonsense. It can't be, because it doesn't bother me, so why did it bother him? And as strange as it sounds, we become mind blind. My experience defines reality, and you could be intelligent, you could be sensitive, but if you're locked into your world and you view the world from your world and your world only, you will not have an easy time satisfying your spouse's needs. So the first great secret in terms of a successful, happy marriage is understanding that 80% of the work has to be in the relationship, the bond, the connection. You're supposed to be lovers. You're supposed to be best friends and lovers. But lovers do those things that lovers do. They understand each other's needs. They meet those needs as much as they can. And the minute that issues come up in the marriage, the work shouldn't be on the issues. Well, you do have to deal with them at some level. But that should be an indicator that there's something in the relationship. And if you're going to solve the issues, the problems, all those things, you're going to spend a lot of time on that. And the core essence you haven't touched. I have a parable, a mushal that I think helps sort of define this. Imagine you have a hot air balloon, a big hot air balloon. And there's a heater. The heater blows air into the hot balloon. So because the heater blows air, the hot air balloon is filled up with air. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. And then a pin. Someone puts a pin. And the pin lets a little hole. And some air is leaking out. And another pin. And some air is leaking out. And another pin. So what happens? And people deal with the pins. You take out the pin. So now you have a good balloon. And that's true and well as long as you're pumping air into that balloon. But if all you do is focus on taking the pins out, but you're no longer pumping air into that balloon, it's not going anywhere. If you're not working on the relationship, if you're not bonding, connecting, if you're not spending time together as a couple, but meaningful time as couples need to spend time. And I don't only mean date night, I mean using all of the tools that bond in the way that they need to be used and understanding my spouse's needs in them. If you're not doing that, then you're wasting your time. because you can have a frictionless marriage and take care of all the pins, not a single pin in that balloon. But if you're not pumping air in, the balloon is flat. And many, many couples, their marriage is just, that's it. There's no bond, there's no connection. They're just not together. Even though there's no friction, they're not fighting. But they're living parallel lives, sharing a roof, sharing a house, but not much else. And 80% of your work has to be on the relationship. And again, you have to understand what that means. And again, we spend a lot of time on the different tools and understanding how to use the tools. But 80% has to be there, and a mere 20% the pins. And oftentimes, for the record, the pins don't even matter. You could leave them in, because if you've got an air that's filled, a balloon that's filled with air and some pins, okay. As long as you're pumping air in, it's okay. He's a good guy with a flaw. But if you're no longer pumping air into that balloon, you're in big trouble. Okay, but let's move on. Let's move on to the second concept. Okay, let me introduce this with a question. This question is for the ladies. Here we go. Ladies, here we go. Anyone here on a diet? Right? Anyone here on a diet? Just, you could answer in the box of it, yes or no. Just put it in. Yeah. Okay. Anyone? No? No one? No one? No one? Okay. So I'll let you into a little part of my reality. Every woman I know is on a diet, and it's certainly after the first kid and for sure after the third kid, but I don't know of a single woman who's not on a diet. Okay, so here's my question. Ladies, what's the big deal? I've gone with my wife to Weight Watchers, and they give you a very full meal plan, nutritious, plenty of snacks, and you lose weight. Why don't you just stick to the diet and just lose the weight and just be at your ideal weight? Yet how many women are at their ideal weight? And that I'm not going to ask you to put in the box there. But I'd like to share with you that very, very few. But why? All you got to do is stick to the diet and you'll change. Stick to the diet and you'll lose the weight. Stick to the diet and you'll be exactly where you want to be. And you know what the answer to that question is? The answer to that question is because change is very, very difficult. Change is very, very difficult when you're fully motivated, when it matters to you in a very real way. And don't tell me, if he really cared, he'd change, because every time you pass that mirror and you say, I'm so fat, I'm so fat, I'm so fat, and just remember, it's not so easy to change. Okay, now let's go. Dina and Moshe. Dina and Moshe, when they were going out, it was incredible. She was so amazed by his energy. Every day it was just like a whirlwind. It was great. And he, on the other hand, he always felt like a knight in shining armor. She was like a little bit nervous sometimes, and he came to save the day. He felt so good. And then they get married, and she discovers that his ADD is out the window. He forgets everything, the car keys. If I give him the baby, he'd forget it. And she finds it very, very difficult to live with his disorganization. He, on the other hand, finds that every Erev Shabbos, it's high drama, and she's the queen. And they both spend the next 25 years each trying to change the other. My friends, would you like to know how much energy is wasted by one spouse trying to change the other? I can't even begin to count. You could power the entire New York City because it doesn't work. You see, what you're trying to do is change the fundamental nature of your spouse. And we all do it. We all engage in this. And to be candid with you, after 25 years of marriage, with tears in my eyes, I wrote my wife this biggest, most beautiful card. And I was crying and crying because I realized it's exactly what I've been doing for 25 years. Now, again, Baruch Hashem, we have a good marriage. And we get along very well. Nevertheless, it only hit me then that I knew there's a better way to do things. And why doesn't she? And why doesn't she? And I had been trying to change it subtly, very carefully, but we all engage in it. And I'd like to share with you that it doesn't work. It doesn't work. Again, in the boot camp, in the marriage boot camp, we get involved in the different personality types and how it is that they manifest themselves. But the bottom line is that you are given a temperament, a nature, and you're not going to change it, and neither will your spouse. And no matter how much your spouse tries to change it, it's not going to change. Now, would you like to know why that's relevant? Because so many times couples, they stop working on the relationship. the issues start surfacing. So, of course, they attack the issues. But so many times those issues are personality based. It is true that he tends to be late, but you're not going to change that. It's not going to change. And don't tell me he doesn't care. I know he cares because he beats himself up for it. And don't tell me if she really cared, she wouldn't bounce checks anymore. It's just she doesn't really care. It's not true at all. She really does care. But that's not her nature. And the minute you focus on the issues and try to change your spouse, you're wasting your time because it doesn't work. I had one guy, this was incredible. His big complaint about his wife was, first of all, she loses her temper with the kids. She loses it, but more than that. We agree that health food and diet, exercise is really important, and she doesn't do anything for the kids. I don't get her. I can't respect her. And he's having a real problem. He can't respect his wife because of this. And I had a difficult time explaining to this young man something interesting. You see, he gets up 5:30 every morning and jumps into a freezing cold shower. Why? Because that way he fully shows that he's Nisgaber, he's in control, and he's an extraordinarily disciplined person. But you know why he is that way? Because that's his nature, that's his temper, and that's great. And for some people, they could excel and reach the stars, and there's some people who don't have that at all, and yet they reach great heights. And you're not going to tell me that one personality type, one temperament's better than the other, because if you look at the Mayer-Briggs, the inventory of personality types, you'll find successful human beings from each and every one. And while that may be true and obvious, the minute we get married, we force ourselves to hold back and not change my spouse, and we rarely succeed because we end up trying to change our spouse to be exactly like me. And it never works. But it's worse than that, it never works. It has a very, very negative effect. You see, in the relationship, there's something called the mirror of the relationship. If you look at a mirror, it shines back exactly what you put into it. And if you walk over to the mirror and smile, well, guess what? That face smiles back. And if you walk over to the mirror and frown, well, guess what? You're going to see a frowning face. And how often do we forget that the marriage is a mirror? And whatever you show to your spouse, you're going to get back. Would you like to know what I mean? What does it feel like to be loved? Right? What does that feel like? So normally, when you're loved, you have a feeling of being, I guess, accepted, approved, maybe cherished, right? That's kind of like what it feels like, right? Okay. What does it feel like to be respected? It feels like you're appreciated, esteemed, approved, right? Good. Okay. Now, what does it feel like when someone tries to change you? The answer is, what it feels like is you're not accepted, not appreciated, you're not good enough, you are inadequate. And it's the exact opposite of the feeling that you get when you are loved and respected. And while we don't think about it, and we certainly don't mean it, the minute you try to change your spouse, what you're sending across that mirror is a very clear message. You are not good enough. You need to improve. You, as you are just not appreciated, not esteemed, not accepted, and certainly not cherished. You need to get your act together. And it can be done with the finest intentions. And it can be done from such love, but what you're putting into that mirror is a very ugly face. You're telling your spouse you ain't good enough. You're just not adequate. You need to get it together. And guess what? When you put that message into the mirror, you're going to get back just that message. Because when you frown into that mirror, you could have the best intentions, but you're going to get back a very ugly face. And I can't tell you how much trouble spouses cause one another by their attempt to improve their spouse. I'm just going to make him better. I'm just going to make her better. If I get her to change this, it's going to be great. It's going to be wonderful. And if you try to change your spouse, I guarantee you're going to pay the price. You won't realize it then. Maybe he's a nice guy and he won't say anything, but at the core of his essence, he knows he is not respected. He's not good enough. And that eats at him, it gnaws at him. And in terms of that relationship, the love, the bond, guess what? He doesn't want to come home. But why? I cook and I prepare and I'm so sweet and so nice. So why doesn't he want to come home? Yeah, because what he feels at home is not what he needs. And it doesn't matter how aligned you are in life's goals. It doesn't matter how much you love your children. And it doesn't matter how much you value the same things. If that bond, that connection is lacking, if you're deteriorating it, you're going to pay the price. And the more you focus on the issues, he's late, she's on time, he's too late, the more you focus on it, I guarantee, number one, you're wasting your time. And number two, the more damage you're doing to the relationship. If you focus your energy instead on building that relationship and connecting, understanding your spouse's needs and really meeting them, you're going to find a very different experience. Can you hear what I'm saying? Do you hear how much this can change? Just this understanding. Just understanding what I'm doing to the relationship. You see, we are all mind blind. I could be wise watching your marriage, but believe me, again, my wife's not here to comment, but believe me, in my own marriage, I don't see it well at all. And becoming a student of the relationship is a key to success. And again, in the marriage boot camp, we spend a lot of time on not just the tools that bond, but how to use them, how to appreciate it, how to get your spouse to be sort of intuitive enough to relate to you what it is they're experiencing. And learning that you don't change your spouse. You certainly don't attack the issues. You're mindful about what you put into that mirror. But let's move on. Let's move on to the third discovery that I made along this path of trying to understand marriage. And to do this, let me ask a question to everyone, men, women, and you can write it in the chat over there or not. Then okay. Here's my question. My question is, why is it that couples fight about such minutia, such frivolous, silly things? I get it if couples fight about big deal stuff. I got that. But you ever notice that most of the fights in a marriage are about tiny little things? Now, why do mature people, now we're not talking about kids, we're not talking about adolescents, why do mature, rational people fight about such tiny little minutia? And I'd like to sort of hone in on this because I think this is the third secret that I discovered, and I think you might agree is pivotal to understanding a marriage. And to do this, let's take Shana and David, a young couple, very nice. They came to the marriage seminar and they heard about the fact you got to go out, you got to spend time together, so they make up Tuesday night, they're going out. Okay, great. As it is, David works in the city, he works for a firm, they provide parking, so they agree they're going to meet at 42nd Street and 8th Avenue. He's going to pick her up. She'll take the train in, and he'll pick her up at 7 o'clock. Okay. In any case, it's Tuesday night, and it's 7 o'clock, and he's not there. It's 7:10, 7:20, 7:25. He shows up, opens the door, and says, "Hi, Shay." And he doesn't exactly get a warm response. She comes into the car, and she's kind of brooding. What's up, dear? What's up? What's up? What's up? I sat there. I sat there like a fool waiting for you. I know, dear, I know, I feel terrible. The problem was we had a client, that client, that one, a really big client. Last minute he called. I felt terrible. I couldn't leave the office. We could have lost that client. I know, that's what I mean. That's what I mean, she says. That's all that counts. It's always about you, always about work, never about me. You don't care about me. All you care about is how much money you make. No, wait, Shane, come on. With all due respect, come on, listen. I am working for us. I didn't want to do this, and I don't know. It's not true. All you got. Okay. Anyway, the fight goes on and on and on and on. Okay. Let's X-ray in on what each of them is experiencing and why that fight suddenly spirals out of control in nanoseconds. So here's how it goes. Shana got ready for the date early, and she made sure to be on the train early. And as a matter of fact, at 10 to 7, she got out of the subway, and she's waiting at the bus stop to be picked up. It's February, and it's a very, very cold day, and she's shivering. And at about 2 minutes to 7, she says to herself, this is really, really cold. And at 2 minutes after 7, she says to herself, why isn't he here? And at 5 minutes after 7, she says, he doesn't care. That's why. Why isn't he here? I'm freezing and he doesn't care. Why isn't he here? And at 10 after 7, in her brain plays that tape. You know why? Because he doesn't care. I'm suffering and he doesn't care and I'm suffering. And at 15 after it gets worse and worse and worse. And by the time she gets into the car, she's pretty worked up. But let's sort of x-ray back into his brain. At 5:30, his client calls and he says to himself, I don't believe it. I made up to meet my wife and I want to meet my wife and I don't want to, but I can't listen. I got to do this. This is for my family. And against his better judgment and against his nature, he works on a case because he knows that if they lose that client, the firm may fire him and may even go out of business. So he has no choice. And he doesn't want to, but he's doing it for his family. And this is the ironic part. They each walk in with a different tape playing in their brain. And what they're arguing about has nothing to do with what they're really feeling. You see, fights between a couple are always about the feelings and never about the issues. It's not about the fact that she had to wait for him. It's about the fact that she feels he didn't care. And when she begins telling him, you don't care, what he hears is, you see, that just proves what I always say. She doesn't appreciate how hard I work. She doesn't appreciate that everything I do, I give up for the family, everything I do for her. She just doesn't appreciate it. And you see, couples never fight about issues. They always fight about the feelings behind the issues. And the words are about the issues, the coming late, the being on time, the bounce a check, not bounce a check. But the fights are never about the issues. The fights are about the feelings behind that and what it means to her, what it means to him. And that is one of the great concepts that you need to understand if you want to be successfully married. Because if you don't understand this, you will fight for the rest of your life about things that you'll never win. And you'll never placate your spouse because you're not talking to the Zach. You see, if she really is troubled by the fact that she feels he doesn't care, all of his telling her, I do care, and all of his saying, but you see, I do, look what I do for the family, look what I do for, is not going to answer the question. And the minute you begin talking about the issues, the minute you focus on the issues, you lost. Because the fights are never about the issues, they're about the feelings behind it. And that concept is very key. But there's a corollary concept that's even more important. Who spins the story? You see, there's a reality. He was late. She was waiting. That's factually what happened. But each of them spun a story out behind it. He came in this gallant hero. He wanted to be early. And despite what he wanted, he decided to put his family first and his responsibilities to his family first. And he didn't want to, but he felt it was the right thing to do. And he spun a story that here he was, this hero, this gallant person dedicated to his family, giving up everything. She, on the other hand, spun a different story. She spun a story that since I'm waiting and it's cold and I'm in pain, it means he doesn't care. It means he doesn't care. And that story began taking on a life of its own. And she proved it. And you see that and this and last week and last month and last year and she went global from that little local, she went global. And before you know it, after the 25 minutes of her waiting, she had a very powerful tale. But you see, once you understand that you are the one who spins that tale, you are the teller of the story, then you understand the key to being happily married. You cannot change your spouse. Any attempt to change your spouse is going to wreck your marriage. The only one you can change in the marriage is you. And that can make such a difference. It's incredible. How many times do we spin those stories, interpret those events when they were so different from what really happened? And one of the great secrets of success in life is learning that the thoughts that cross my mind are not necessarily true. And just because a thought came to my brain doesn't mean I have to accept it. And learning that my spouse is a reasonable, good person, and learning that my spouse may not have bad intentions here requires an awful lot of discipline. Because when that tape in the brain plays and you begin playing again and again, it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and learning to catch yourself and stopping it, and maybe even deprogramming yourself, takes a lot of work. I cannot tell you how many times I get couples that come in, and each one, Hashem Yirachem, I have the 4-hour and 5-minute meeting. You know what the 4-hour and 5-minute meeting is? 5 minutes for me to figure out what's going on. 4 hours for me to explain to them how their spouse is not a demon. 4 hours. I have to take him separately and her. I can't do it together. It's never happened. I have to take them into separate rooms and I have to deprogram him step by. Yes, I know you think she's a demon. I know she's a devil. I know she flies at a broom at night. I know. No. And if I can get him to be quiet, I have to get him to just stop. Sometimes I just let him rant. Okay, we're done. Good. Now let's analyze what actually happened factually. So what was the fact and what was your interpretation? What was the fact and what was the tale that you told? And then I get her in the room. Oh, okay, good. Stop. Again, what was the fact? Good. And what was the story? Good. So after 2 hours each, I get them to the point where they go, oh, I get it. And now I'll share with you one of my key frustrations. It only lasts until they leave my office. You see, these concepts are pivotal for the success of your marriage. If you want a happy marriage, I believe there's a very real formula, a system to do just that. You see, Hashem wants you to be happy. And Hashem designed this institution of marriage to succeed. And it doesn't take huge changes. Usually it's minor changes, little changes in the relationship, and you start the cycle of the relationship spinning up instead of spinning down. And the first yesod you have to understand is 80% of your effort, 80% of your work has to be on the relationship. And I can't tell you how many times I get couples, the man, the wife, both complaining, my wife, my husband, this, that. How many times did you buy her flowers? How many cards did you send? How many times did you say I love her? And everyone's got issues. The minute that there are issues, it's time for you to say, I get it. Of course there are issues. Everyone has issues. Everyone has stuff. We're all human beings. But why does it bother me so? Why is she so upset about it? The answer is something's wrong in the relationship. Do we have to deal with the pins? Okay, to some extent, yeah, 20% of your effort. But you could be a very, very good husband with a flaw in a loving marriage. Or you could be a creep, a loser, a down and out, a bum. And women, it's no different. If you don't learn your husband's needs, emotional needs, and you treat him as if he's you, just, in male form, but exactly what I need, you're going to find some very, very strange responses. And the first concept that a couple has to understand is the essence of a successful marriage is the bond. And again, we have the tools of bonding. You have to use each of them. You have to use appreciation. You have to use friendship. You have to use physical touch and intimacy. You have to use romantic love. All of them are tools. But you have to understand your spouse's language. Now, can you relate to how much difference that alone can make in a couple's success? Do you understand what a difference that can make alone? Just that point. If a couple just focuses on that, I can't tell you what a difference it would make in their entire marriage. But we don't do it. And that's the first concept. And the second concept is getting control. Understanding that my spouse isn't doing that to annoy me. And my spouse isn't going to change. And just like I'm not going to lose weight, my spouse is not going to change. But why? If he loved me, he would change. If he really loved me, he would. Madam, again, look in the mirror. Your ideal weight, are you at it? Why not? Do you care? Yes. And you don't understand how many times I go through that exact litany with women, and men are no different. Men also need to change their wife. It's usually not as egregious, and it's usually not as badly received. But I guarantee, if you would like to make sure that your husband dislikes you, if you would like to make sure that your husband really doesn't want to come home, just do your best to change him. Do your best to improve him, make him better, make him an even better superstar. And you're going to find you're putting in that mirror a very ugly face. Because what he hears is not respect. He hears you're not adequate, you're not good enough, And I can't tell you how many times I hear guys say, why can't you just be happy? All I want is for her to be happy. And she's always complaining, full fighting. And why can't she just stop it? And understanding that my spouse has a nature, and my spouse's nature is different than mine, and I will not change my spouse. My spouse can't change my spouse. I can't change my spouse. And any attempt to do it just damages the relationship. And that's the second concept, learning to embrace my spouse as she is, as he is, without changing, without manipulating, without figuring out clever ways to get her to change. But the third concept is maybe the biggest. And that is understanding that any issue that surfaces in a marriage is never the issue. It's always the underlying feelings behind it. Invariably, men and women crosses the gender divide. And women almost always will feel, he doesn't love me, he doesn't cherish me. Men will almost always feel, she doesn't respect me. There are times when it's different. There are some people who aren't. But generally speaking, that's the gender divide. And by the way, gentlemen, would you like a little piece of advice? Let's imagine you get into a fight with your wife. And what happens is what's typical for us guys. It gets heated. She said, he said, she said. And all of a sudden you realize this is not going anywhere. And the more we talk about this, the more embroiled we get, more angry we get. And you say to your wife very reasonably, you say, listen, dear, let's put this to rest. We'll go to sleep, and in the morning we'll discuss it further. But she won't let it go. Look, we're not getting anywhere. Look, we discussed it, we went through it, and we're not getting anywhere. And all we're doing is getting angry and angry. Let's just stop it. And she won't stop. And so you do that which we guys do so well. You stonewall. All right, listen, that's it. I'm not discussing anymore. And you walk away, and you don't talk, and you stonewall, and everything's good. And guess what? She gets more and more angry, angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. Now what's going on? I think when you understand what's going on, it's an incredible eye-opener. Typically, women process their emotions by speaking about them, by discussing. How many times have you heard your wife tell a story to 5 friends? And she calls one friend and a second friend and a third friend, this sister, that one, that one. Guys don't do that. And women typically process their emotions, kind of identify their emotions, and release their emotions through the process of speaking. And very often a woman, when she talks things out, feels better. Guys typically don't do that. In any case, what happens is the woman wants to talk about it, deal with it, because this is our marriage and it really counts. And he realizes this ain't getting us nowhere, and he stonewalls because, listen, this is just getting me more and more upset, more angry, and this is obviously dumb. Okay, gentlemen, would you like to know a brilliant strategy? Brilliant strategy. And the next time that happens, you say to your wife the following: listen, dear, it's clear we're getting more upset and more upset. It's not that I don't want to talk about it. I do, but I just feel this is not the time. But this I want you to understand. I love you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I wouldn't trade you for anything in the world, but just right now I can't talk. Again, I can't talk about it now. I want you to know we're good. I love you. You're the best thing that ever happened. I wouldn't trade you for anything in the world. Do it 3 times, and I guarantee it's going to be different. And would you like to know why? Because at the core of our essence, a woman needs to know that she's loved, that she's cherished, and women are typically insecure. You know that little daffodil that the little girl pulls out? He loves me not, he loves me, he loves me not. So I think most women do that for the beginning of their marriage, first maybe 35 years or so of their marriage. And the minute the fight happens, what she feels is, he clearly doesn't love me, he doesn't cherish me. And the marriage itself is in deep, dire straits. And if you just calm that piece down, and you just say, listen, this is a topical issue, it's a problem, I admit it, but it's chas v'shalom, it's nothing to do with us. I love you. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. I wouldn't trade you for anything. If you could just reassure her of that fact, ooh, a different world. But you know what that's called? That's called being smart. It's called not being mind blind. It's called reading my spouse's needs and understanding that my needs and her needs are not the same. By the way, ladies, the minute you get into a fight with your husband, just listen for the words of him not feeling respected, not feeling adequate, not feeling good enough, and you'll understand he's working with a very different framework. These concepts are the fundamental yesod of a successful marriage. Understanding that my experience doesn't define reality. Understanding that my experience and my spouse's experience might be very different, and I have to learn her world. She has to learn his world. And getting into that world is not so simple. Getting into that world is not so easy. And the best person to teach you about that world is your spouse. Sometimes it's not so easy because the spouse, him or herself, doesn't know, but that is the first yesod. 80% working on the relationship. The pins are very irrelevant, but the relationship has to be from my spouse's end, working on his or her needs. The second concept is understanding that I can't change my spouse. I'm not supposed to change my spouse. More than that, any attempt to change my spouse damages the relationship. Into that mirror, I'm putting an ugly face. I'm telling her she's not cherished. I'm telling her she's not good enough. And by the way, you should know something. My wife was cooking for Shabbos, and she asked one of the kids, "Is this dish too salty?" And one of the kids said, "Why don't you ask Abba? He's right here." She said, "Abba would never tell me." She said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Abba would never tell me it's too salty." And it's absolutely true. If my wife asked me, "Is the food too salty?" I would never, ever utter those words. And she knows it. But why not? I want you to hear very carefully why not. Gentlemen, open your ears. When you say to your wife, "The food is too salty," excuse me for saying it this way, it's the equivalent of saying you're fat and ugly. You're failed. And even though she won't think that, but there's a certain feeling. I'm not good enough. Oh, come on, Rabbi, come on. That's getting carried away. It's getting carried away until you climb into the inner world of us human beings. Human beings are incredibly sensitive. We are incredibly sensitive. And the key is to realize just as things really, really bother me, even though they seem like small things to you, but they really do bother me, well, good morning, America, so too my spouse is a sensitive human being. And even if to me those things don't seem like a big deal, and it doesn't seem to bother her. But if they bother her, they bother her. If they bother him, they bother him. And understanding that there's one reason why I do this or I don't do it. Not because I care, but because it's important to my spouse. But come on, he's just carrying on. He's obviously just carrying on because it's clearly not. Yep, you can say that as long as you're alive. And many people do. But it doesn't bode for a successful marriage. The relationship, working on the relationship. Number two, understanding my job is not to change my spouse. My job is to embrace him or her as they are. And number three, this concept, it's never about the words. It's never about the issues. Any fight, any issue is always about the feelings. And that has two parts to it. One is learning what the feelings are. And number two, learning that I am the one who spins the tale. The reason why I get so upset when my wife does X, Y, or Z is because I interpret that in a particular way. And there's only one human being under the sun who can change that interpretation. And that's me. My spouse can't. She's not going to change her behavior because that's her nature. But I sure can change my interpretation. And realizing that my spouse is not doing it because she's mean-spirited. She's not doing it because she's nasty. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, all you have to do is listen to couples when they're fighting. And the amount of, oh my goodness, you would think each of them describing the other one as Attila the Hun, Hitler, and Chaminikov. You name me the biggest Rishonim in the world, they don't even hold a candle to the wickedness of my spouse. But how could you say something so stupid? How could you say something so ridiculous? Your spouse is a reasonable person. Your spouse is a nice person. How could you say something like that? And the answer is, once you get into the fray, and once you hurt my feelings, and once I start feeling attacked and vulnerable, the human being becomes a very, very different sort of person. And you put into that mirror a very different face, and that face comes back and back and forth and back and forth. And before you know it, they're putting very, very ugly faces at each other. And they really are acting very, very out of character. And they really are acting in a manner that one would say is pretty darn wicked. But they're reasonable people. Oh, they are. And if you don't get this thing called marriage straight, and if you don't get this relationship part straight, it gets mighty ugly, mighty quick. And that is the concept, and that is what I'd like to share with you. These three ideas, and I believe that this can transform a marriage. I believe that if you focus on this and work on this, I believe that this can make all the difference. Again, I've seen it in hundreds and hundreds of situations. And now I'd like to ask you permission. What I've presented to you is the webinar. What I've presented to you is the concepts that I wanted to. And now I'd like to tell you about a little bit of a key frustration that I have and ask you for a moment or two to explain something. Is that okay? And I'm going to really ask you to write in the chat a yes or no, because if you don't want to, I'll end now. I got plenty of other things to do. But please, if it's a yes, then please tell me. No, one yes, two yeses, okay? And no, all right, no, don't say no. Okay, good. All right, let's assume it's a yes. Okay. Okay, so here's one of my key frustrations. I get it all the time. It might be a phone call, it might be an email. Rabbi Shafier, please, can you help this couple? Rabbi Shafier, please, can you help me? It's my spouse, it's my husband, my wife. Blah, 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 blah. And we sit down. And I say to myself, this is an exercise in futility. And I cannot tell you how many times I get a couple comes to my house. And we sit down, we do that 4 hour and 5 minute meeting, right? And they leave happy. Why? Because we break down some of the core issues that are going on. And they get a better understanding. She gets him, he gets her. They understand what they need, and they walk away hopeful. And I remain there saddened. Why? Because I know that by tomorrow morning, they're going to be back to the old antics. Because you see, these concepts aren't just like information. Oh, I got it. My life has changed. Transformation is a process. Transformation is a series of exercises and doing it and working it through and doing it again and making the mistakes and being corrected and correcting yourself. And it's a slow growth process. But I don't have time for it. And to be honest with you, most couples aren't even that invested. You know, everyone loves to complain. And you give them some real work. Oh, well, I don't know. You know, that's too hard. You want me to drive? I've had couples tell me, oh, you live in Muncie? I live in Brooklyn. That's too far for me to drive. Madam, I don't charge. I'm offering you my time for free, and you tell me it's too much for you to drive. Okay, leave that alone. Never mind. I didn't say a thing. I didn't say a word. But my frustration is that if they're willing to put in the effort, I don't have the time. And quite frankly, they don't have the direction. And after a while, it began dawning on me. What's needed is a boot camp. What I really need to do is take a couple into the woods, into a cabin for 6 weeks, and really do this properly. I don't think life allows for that. But I did realize that there is a possibility of something working, and that's called a boot camp. And I thought about it. And I realized that so many of these couples, if I get them before it spirals out of control, it can be stopped. And I cannot tell you, by the way, if I had $1 for every time I said to my wife, it's a match made in heaven, and they're living in Gehenna. Because I cannot tell you how many times I see couples doing things that are just so dumb, self-destruct, but they can't see it. I can't see my flaw. She can't see her flaw because we're each in this too deep. And if I could have stopped it earlier, if I could give them some tools, explain it to them, work it out, and go through the transformative process, not just the giving information. This was a nice hour we spent together. But you understand that the information that you have here is information. We'll go home. Baruch Hashem, my marriage, thank God, Baruch Hashem is good. I don't know about your marriage, maybe it's also very good. But the information that you have here is going to be of not great value. Why? Because it's not about knowledge. It's about transforming your behavior, your actions, your ways. And it's about not interpreting your husband, your wife in the wrong way. It's about focusing on the relationship, but not paying it lip service, actually doing it. And more than anything, it's about understanding the essence of your inner workings and your spouse's and learning to change things. And what's needed is a boot camp. A boot camp means a 6-week intensive program where we do the exercises and the real work. So in any case, the webinar part is over, and you're free to leave and you're free to take this information. And I thank you for joining me, and I hope you gained something. If you are in a marriage where you would like to improve things, whether it be marriage is good but you want to make it a little better, or especially if there's stuff going on, issues, things, then I'd like to ask you to stick around, because I have a little proposition, a little offer to make. Again, this is not for everybody, And this is not a series of classes. If you're looking for shiurim, you go to the Shmu site. There are many, many shiurim. I have things on marriage, the marriage seminar. You could download your. This is a very different process. This is a transformative process. And I would like to open this up to couples. It's not going to be for a large group of couples because, to be honest with you can't work with a very large group. But it can be done, in a group setting. And if you're not interested, again, I thank you for joining, and I hope you've gained a lot. And take it. And you could use, by the way, a lot of this information you could take and just use it. And I think it would be very beneficial and very, very helpful. If, however, you do want to consider joining me on this transformative process, this 6-week boot camp, please stick around, and I'm going to explain to you what it is. And again, if not, I'm fine and happy, and I'm glad you joined, and I hope you gained a lot, and I wish you much success. Okay, please hang up if you're, again, I'm not insulted, and by the way, I see people coming in and out, but it's good. You can leave, and I'm good. I'm good. Okay, now, assuming you're sticking around, let me explain to you what I have in mind. So, again, this concept of changing your relationship and this concept of learning to deal with the stuff that comes up in a different way requires a process. But join me for a moment just in the following. Imagine for a minute that you and your spouse really fundamentally began working on the bond, the connection, but you really did the things that lovers do. And you really sent the notes and the cards and you figured out what it is your spouse, and meaning after she didn't seem so happy, you then went back and asked her why, and you then began delivering in the way that she needs and you really focused on this. And imagine that when things started, issues started coming up, you learned to deal with them. And imagine that for a moment that you actually stopped trying to change your spouse. Do you see that making a difference in your marriage? I can tell you countless experiences. When I get a couple to realize this, when I get them to actually implement it night and day, it changes everything. But again, the problem is change isn't simple, and change doesn't just happen. So the thought process that came to my brain was what we need again is a 6-week marriage transformation boot camp. But what that means is a lot of work. And I'll explain to you how I sort of mapped it out and how I envision it. 6 weeks, each week, it'll probably be a Sunday night. For an hour and a half, we do a live webinar. And the purpose of this live webinar is the exercises, I'll introduce the concepts, but many of the exercises, I'll ask you to do homework. A lot of the homework is you'll be either listening to audio tapes or videos or reading things. But more than that, I'm going to be asking you to do written assignments. And not because this is school, but because it requires writing it down. You see, you actually have to pay attention. You can't just say, yes, I will. Great idea, Rabbi. I'm going to do it and not do it. Because if you say, great idea and don't do it, guess what? You didn't do it. So the actual, 6 times we meet in this boot camp, it's, again, a webinar, 90 minutes. Part of it I present the concepts, the ideas. Part of it we review some of the homework, so to speak. There will be a lot of participation. Now, don't worry about anonymity because it's all, as you can see, the chat. No one can tell who you are. And we even have a way to mask all names and et cetera, so no one will even know. And if you want, you're more than welcome also to raise your hand, and I call on you to use the microphone. But again, most people are more comfortable just typing in. You could ask questions. But more than anything, the actual 6 weeks is an opportunity for me to, A, present sort of the meat and potatoes, and then ask for responses, questions, and deal with some of the exercises. I give you homework. We come back the next week. We try different things. Much of the work is on the relationship. Now, there are different modules, and in the 6 weeks, we'll go through the different modules. Some are perspective, meaning perspective of understanding, A, the Torah's perspective on a marriage, B, the male perspective, women's perspective. A lot of it is understanding human nature, and we'll deal with that. Again, as I mentioned, we have a module just on tools that bond, because that is a huge, huge part. And again, as I say, 80% of a marriage's success is based on that connection. A lot of our work is going to be understanding these tools, how to use them, how to understand my spouse's language, how to understand what my spouse needs and using it. And it's going to be a very, very, I believe, Mitzvah Hashem, a very life-altering experience. So the first part of it is just the marriage webinar. Now, in addition to that, I put together an awful lot of material because, you see, to be honest with you, 90 minutes is a limited amount of time. And 6 90-minute sessions gives us some time, and again, a lot of time, we're going to be back and forth discussions, etc. But I also put together an entire series, brand new, never taped before, of videotapes. I call it the Marriage Transformation Seminar, and it's 11 parts. I think it total about 10 hours or so, where I go through from the entire process, how it works, how it functions, and each video is it's video, it's audio, there are also transcripts of it, but that really gives you the concepts, the ideas, and that is a very good learning experience. And I'm going to also assign parts of it as homework. You'll be listening to this minute to here, for each week, etc. But as a library, you'll have that access to that because that's it's a tool that sort of helps you on your own learn and understand. And the third part is the marriage seminar live, which is I gave a 5-part in Brooklyn, which was professionally videotaped. And afterwards we had Q&A, and that's a new angle. You see, those are professionally videotaped, and you get to see the same concepts presented differently. Okay, in any case, this 6-week process, is a very different thing than I've ever done before. Now, the problem that I faced is I believe it's absolutely vital for transformation. If we want to change a marriage, we don't want to just hear information, we have to do the process. Here is the problem. The problem is that life for me right now, Baruch Hashem, is good. I record stuff, I send it out to my video editor, he puts on the web, says shalom, and we're good to go. To do this process, I have to really, really get involved in couples' lives, and I have to really, really dedicate a tremendous amount of time. And I have to commit to it. But there's something else that I need. I need your commitment. You see, if you want to do this, it can't be just, okay, Rabbi, I'm going to listen to the lectures. I'm going to listen to all the lectures. I love it when I ask people, did you listen to the marriage seminar? Absolutely. The whole thing? Yeah, all 3. Yeah, but there are 11 parts. Oh, yeah, well, I didn't get that. Oh, yeah, good. So if you would like to, hear a nice shir, a number of shiurim, this is not for you. And again, I don't mean this in a pejorative sense. This is not open for the public. It's not a big deal thing. I don't want thousands of people, hundreds of people coming. It's supposed to be a very small group, and it's supposed to be very intense. And the first thing that's completely, absolutely mandatory, without any discussion, is commitment. My commitment, but it means your commitment. And that brings us to a point that's very, very interesting. My role is primarily to be coach. The material is here. I'll present certain points and we'll discuss, etc. My role is to be coach. And to do this, I'm committed, and you have to be committed, and we've got to put a price tag on it. You see, I don't do this for a living, but I have to allocate a tremendous amount of resources, and you have to allocate a tremendous amount of resources. I love producing free material. I do it all the time. All the material on the shoes is free. And I love doing it, and I hate putting a price tag, because I know that the minute I put a price tag, I choke off 90% of the traffic. 90% of the people or more who came to this marriage transformation webinar will not come to this boot camp. And by the way, that I'm happy about, because they don't belong, they don't need it, or they're not ready for it, whatever. But I hate charging because it cuts off traffic. But if I don't charge, number one, I can't give it the time, but more importantly, you can't commit to it. And therefore I have to charge. And I shouldn't have to apologize, but I always do feel badly. And I have to say that, I don't know why I have to, but I have to, so I am. So here's the question. How do I price this? And this was something I went back and forth and back and forth. How do you price a 6-week transformative bootcamp? So I went online and I found there are quite a number. This is not, a novel approach in the world out there. There are many marriage seminars, online classes. I mean, the online courses today are a big deal, and even in the marriage area. And there's some that are even decent. Some have good points to make. And I found the price tag on them are in the thousands and thousands of dollars. And I believe that's appropriate. I believe it's proper. And I believe the proper price tag should be well over $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 without a question. The problem is, not that you can't afford it, you probably can, but I can't charge that. First of all, many people can't afford it. And also, I don't know, I can't do it. But I can't have it be free. So the question is, what do I do? How do we price this thing? So here's what I did. I took the different modules and I gave them what I call a retail price. And I figured, let me put a retail price on them, and then we'll put them together as a bundle, and we'll come up with a price for the entire 6-week boot camp. Okay, so we start with the actual boot camp. The boot camp, which consists of, the 6 weeks, the homework, the coaching, the whole really transformative process. It really is a very thorough understanding of marriage. It will allow you not to understand it theoretically, but understand it practically, changing the essence of your marriage. So you look online anywhere and you see that the price, that part alone is usually in the $2,000, $3,000 range. So I price that at $1,297. That's what I say is the retail market value of it. Okay, good. Next part. We take the marriage transformation system. Those are the videos and the audio as well as the transcripts. Remember, transcript means that it's all written out. So you can review. You don't have to watch the whole 45-minute video again. You watch it one time because I think it's very important. But when you want to review it, you have the transcript right there. That entire part, which really is the soup, the nuts, that's the entire package really presented in a Shulchan Aruch kind of manner right there in front of you. So that part, which again includes the transcripts and the audios and the video, that part I put at a retail value of $797. Okay. Now, we have the Marriage Seminar Live. Now, that's the 5-part live marriage seminar that I gave in Brooklyn. Now, this was given to a mature audience, and I really worked on the material, and it's beautifully developed in a particular manner. You'll see it's different than the material as I presented it in the Marriage Transformation Seminar, because it was spoken to a different audience in a different way, and it's very helpful to see different angles, different ways. Also, after each one of the shiurim, there's a Q&A, question answer. There's also, again, transcripts and audios, and all this is arranged in a beautiful website. We have, we use Thinkific, which is one of these online course holders, and it's really beautifully developed and beautifully worked out. Everything is there. You have the audio, the video, the transcript, etc. So this part, the Marriage Seminar Live, I put at a $497 value. Okay, in addition to that, we have the Marriage Seminar Manual. Now, the Marriage Seminar Manual, and you can see a copy there, the Marriage Seminar Manual is that is basically all of these ideas organized in a manual. Now, it's not a book like I would write, when I write a book, if you read Stop Surviving or you read Find and Keep Your Soulmate, there it was a polished work to get you drawn in. This is not that. These are the facts. This is the system. This is what you got. It's a manual. It's a manual that goes through all of the steps, all of the parts, all of the procedures, and it's very, very informative and very good. Okay, so I put that at $27. As a matter of fact, it actually sells for that, so that I think certainly is appropriate. Okay, so here's my package. I put this together, and we have the Marriage Transformation, the 6-week boot camp, that was $1,297. We have the Marriage Transformation System, that's $797 value. We have the Marriage Seminar Live, and that's $497. And the Marriage Seminar Manual, $27. So it comes to a total value of $2,618. Okay, now, I'm not going to ask for that amount, but I want to ask you a question. Let's say I did. Let's say I said to you, I can change your marriage. Let's say you thought about it, and you thought about what I was discussing previously, and maybe you've heard all the shmuzim, and you realize that this might very well stop the fighting between you and your spouse. What would that be worth? Or let's say I explained to you, and let's say you thought about it, and you realize that this could be the key difference of the next 20 years of whether you bond, you connect, or whether your marriage is flat. Would it be worth the $2,618? And I say to you, it would not be worth that. No, it would be priceless. Do you understand that your marriage is everything? Your marriage, by the way, if you claim to be an Orthodox Jew, I guarantee one fight with your spouse you'll be over more losases and asays than you can even begin counting. And even though it's justified, and even though he calls it, I guarantee the amount of losono ishas amito, the exact opposite, the amount of lashon hara, you cannot begin to count the amount of clear, open averas that you will be over on one fight. Hundreds, maybe thousands. I just love it. Yom Kippur time, people say, what do I have to do tshuva for? Are you married? I guarantee you don't get to look at it. No, but it's caused, it's justified. Now, it might be true. If you really couldn't do anything about it, if you couldn't change the relationship, if there weren't tools, if you didn't have a way, then maybe you're right. Maybe it's, what can you do? Honest. What I'm presenting to you is a way to change it, a transformative process that's going to change the very fundamental fabric of the relationship. Is it going to cure all of mankind's problems? No. But it's going to bring a little bit of a difference in the relationship and start the cycle spinning upwards. It's going to teach you how to deal with things. It will not be a cure. You take this pill and boom, everything goes away. But if you do the exercises and you work on it properly, Hashem helps. And you'll find, as so many couples have, that it makes a tremendous difference. So again, if all this did was what we've been discussing up till now, would it be worth $2,618? I say it would be worth 10 times that, and I certainly hope that you agree. But in any case, I'm not charging $2,618. See, what it boils down to is this process has to be both a commitment of my time, a commitment of your time, but it has to be reasonable. So I put together the entire package: the Marriage Transformation Bootcamp, the Marriage Transformation System, the Marriage Seminar Live, Marriage Seminar Manual, the total package, the 6-week transformative process. And by the way, if you miss a week, it's always recorded and you always have the option of listening. I want you to attend because the interaction is very important. And certainly listening right away is important because doing the exercise for the next week is a key to success. But the entire package is not $2,618. I am asking that you invest $599 in this. And if you'd like to join me, you can just go to marriage.theshmooze.com.co. You'll see on the side a little button. All you do is push it. Again, that's marriage, marriage.theshmooze.com.go. You can see it on the screen, or again, you hit the button. If you want to sign up, you can join and sign up. And it'll be starting next in 1 week from now. And I really, what I'd like to do is really sort of like put this into perspective for a minute. Again, as I say to you, your marriage is the center, your key relationship, and will impact what you do more than anything. And I really, honestly, and I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but I get really tired of people kvetching. You see, I don't make light of suffering. And believe me, I know when a couple comes to me or someone calls me about a couple, there's a lot of pain and there's a real lot of hardship. And I don't want to make light of it. Nevertheless, I do get tired of the kvetching if there's an alternative, if there's a solution, if there's a way of understanding why your spouse acts that way, the way of understanding why you're getting those reactions, and there's a way of changing that, then I get very, very tired of hearing the kvetches. And I really don't want to hear someone call me up, Rabbi, can I please talk to you, please? Again, I want to talk and I want to, but I sure want you to go through this process first. But why? Why can't you just, because to be honest with you, you're going to bend my ear and I'm going to listen to the Lashon Hara for an hour and you're going to gain nothing and I'm surely going to gain nothing. Because you see, I'm not solving the problem. This will. You see, these concepts, these exercises and going through it, but not in a confrontational manner with your spouse, but stepping back and analyzing and understanding it, I think it's priceless. I think it's gold. If you want to change your marriage, go to, again, you have the link over there. It's marriage.theshmooze.com.go. And I think it's a transformative process. I mean, just do the math. You know, you take a decent marriage therapist, charges $150 to $200 an hour. You have to understand something. I'm a rabbi, and I don't do this for a living. So I have to, I don't know why, but I think I have to justify my charging money. I don't know why everybody tells me I don't have to, but okay. But do the math. A decent marriage therapist charges $150 to $200 an hour. How much time is it going to take for you to work on the marriage if it gets further and continues to go downhill? So I'd like to share with you, it's not going to take a lot of time because it won't work. You see, most of the time, quite frankly, marriage therapists don't succeed. Most of the time they fail. Sometimes, unfortunately, because it's too late, but often because it's not about the issues. It's not like, that's not where the action's at. You're going to solve the issues and get rid of all the issues, but guess what? It's the relationship that's the key. And if you're not understanding your spouse and you're not meeting his or her needs and you're not really developing that and you're not learning how to embrace your spouse and how to recognize his or her strengths and weaknesses, it ain't going to help. So if you need to put a price tag on it, just do the math of going to a marriage therapist for, let's say, 10 sessions. And again, I guarantee you do the work here, it's going to be way, way more impactful than 10 sessions in a marriage therapist. If you want to sign up, go to marriage.com, marriage.theshmooze.com.go. But I would like to just sort of make you a little more comfortable. I would like to give you a money-back guarantee. And here's how it goes. Anytime during these 6 weeks, if you feel that you're not getting out of this program value equal or greater than your investment, you let me know and I will refund the full amount. I want you to understand something. For this to succeed, I need your commitment. I need you to be in it. But I don't want any grumbling, and I don't want anyone saying afterwards it wasn't. This is absolutely an ironclad guarantee. And more than that, I say the following. You come, sign up, pay the amount. If you're not happy after 3 weeks, 4 weeks, you send me an email and the information is yours to keep. You could keep the rest of anything you downloaded, anything you could have it. Here's how it works. Best case scenario, the program changes your marriage and your life. Worst case scenario, you have some great information and you pay nothing. You see, I believe that this can change marriages, and I believe it's one of the few ways that can. And again, not that I'm such a tzaddik, but I really, honestly, it pains me. It pains me when I know there's a way that things can be different. It pains me when I know that just with a little bit of intelligence, a little bit of emotional intelligence, a little bit of understanding your spouse's world, and suddenly the whole thing changes. And I've seen it time after time after time. So I ask you to join me. Again, if you're willing to put in the time and effort, the money part you don't have to risk because, again, there is a money-back guarantee. The only risk is your time because that part I can't replace. You see, if you're not committed to this, if you're not in it, it will not work. If your intention is to audit the class, let me just check it out a little bit, and you're not going to actually do the work, you're not going to actually do the exercises and really do what you need to do, I guarantee it will not change anything. It's not going to work. And if you're looking for some nice online shiurim, again, you go to theshmooze.com, they're all free. You don't have to pay a penny. I don't charge you anything. Please go there. They're free. You download, etc. This is a whole different idea. The idea here is we're going to interact. I am the coach. Again, I'll present the concepts, and the concepts are there, both in the other parts, the videos, the audios, etc. But my job is to coach you. I'm going to take your questions, but I will not take any kvetching. Let me say that again. Anyone who signed up already, wait, stop, come back. I should call them back. If you're going to come to the session and gripe and complain, that's not what this is about. I know she's bad. I know he's evil. I don't care. There's only one question. What did I say? What was the reaction and why? My spouse is reasonable. My spouse is a good person. Why did this happen? And what we're going to do is a lot of x-raying the relationship, x-raying what you said, what he said, what she said, and studying the back and forth, because griping doesn't do much of anybody any good. Certainly not you, and certainly not me, but this can. So really the real question is, are you committed to making a change? If you're not, then again, I thank you for joining me. I thank you for staying longer and listening to this little spiel over here. And I'm okay, and we'll be good friends and et cetera. I'll be honest with you. I really don't want anybody calling me up and saying, Rabbi, could I talk to you about my marriage, until they've gone through this. Because, and again, not that I'm a cruel person, chas v'shalom at all, but it's so frustrating. Do you understand? It's like you come to a doctor and say, I'm not taking the medicine, cure me. Well, sir, I have medicine. No, I won't take the medicine, but cure me. Please just open your mouth and no. So what can I tell you? This, I believe, is the cure. Anything that I know, I'm not just willing to share, I want to share because, again, my goal is to get the marriage to change, to get it to be different. But the key to the marriage changing isn't me. It's you. And it's you doing the work. You doing the exercises, you studying it and learning to step away from your own and learning to figure out what's going on. So you're welcome to join me. We have the Marriage Transformation Boot Camp, the 6 weeks. And with that is the Marriage Transformation System. That's the 11-part video part. And again, it's all a nice, thinkific site. It's beautifully arranged. And again, that has the transcripts. It has the audios. You can download it, read it, etc. You have the Marriage Live, which again is a very good, the Marriage Seminar Live is a very good, it's also funny. We did a lot of short clips from it because it really ended up being very funny. You have that total package. It's all available. You just go to marriage.theschmooze.com.go. And again, you have the link over there. But if you don't remember, it's marriage.theschmooze.com.go. I welcome you to join me. Again, there is a money-back guarantee. If you find that you're not happy, I'm fine with it. And by the way, I don't mind. There's only one thing I mind. I don't want you to try it. I'm not interested in that because honestly, it doesn't work. If you want to really put yourself into it and you really want to commit to doing it, I'm fine. And if you're not happy after 2 weeks, after 1 week, after 3 weeks, I'm great. I will gladly refund your full amount. I have no problem with that. If your attitude is, well, let me check it out, please do us both a favor because it's not going to work. You see, again, this is not about information. This is not let me study another block Gemara. Studying block Gemara is wonderful and learning Shurim is wonderful and Mussar is great. This is not about that. This is about transforming your marriage, your relationship, and the work has to be on your part. Now, please, if you have any questions, please put in the box on the side. You could type in any questions. And I will take questions or thoughts, observations. Please just type it in the box over there. I can't guarantee I'll get to all of them, but I will try to get to some. And I'll try to answer as many as I can. Again, to register for the webinar, it starts in 1 week. And again, you go to marriage.theschmooze.com.go. On that page, you'll see all the information actually when the webinar starts, etc. It'll all be there. And again, please write down any questions that you have. Please write it down. I'll try to answer. I'll try to do my best. Okay, actually, I see some questions coming in. Very good. Okay. Here's one. What if my spouse is not that interested in participating in this? Okay, that's a very good question. Let me go back to the name of this webinar. The name of the webinar is the Marriage Transformation Seminar, How to Transform Your Marriage Even If Your Spouse Refuses to Change. Those are the key words. Even if your spouse refuses to change. Now, why did I write the words that way? So to be honest with you, it's because I have a Yetzer Hara. It's true. I have a Yetzer Hara. And what I was doing was taking revenge. Nakama, a bad midah. I admit it. Avisi, chatasi, I have sinned. Because I'm so tired of each spouse coming in, the devil she is, and she refuses to change. The devil he is, and he refuses to change. And each one has the other one pegged. Each one knows it's the other one's fault, and each one knows the other one refuses to change. And that's the great concept. You're right. She's going to refuse to change. You're going to refuse to change until one of you decides to change. And once you change, the relationship changes. You see, it's a mirror. Whatever you put into the mirror, you get back. And if you act differently, somehow you get a different response. And if you put a different face, somehow that mean, wicked witch doesn't act so mean and wicked. And I have to share with you that you can change this marriage alone, despite your spouse, and even if your spouse refuses to change. Because you're the only one who can change this relationship. Now, it's true your spouse also could, but if you put into the mirror a different face, it will change the relationship. If you learn your spouse's needs, if you learn what ticks him or her off, you learn what it is that they need, and you begin providing it, it changes the relationship, and suddenly people become nice and sweet. And I just want to remind you, your spouse used to be a very reasonable person. And hopefully marriage is good, and you realize that your spouse most of the time is pretty nice, just sometimes he acts like a creep. But that's the point. He acts like a creep because you're stepping on his feet. You don't realize it, you don't see it that way, but I guarantee that's what's happening. Because I deal with couples all the time, and both are reasonable, and both are good people. And I know them, and I understand exactly what's going on. And they're good people who don't get each other, and good people who are making their lives difficult. So if you want to know, can you do this alone? The answer is absolutely. Is it better if your spouse comes along? It makes it easier for you, but it's worth doing it alone. And you'd be surprised. By the way, a lot of times the spouse will want to join, because once he or she sees the other one changing, all of a sudden there's some new hope, there's some new idea, and whoa, it's a whole different ball game. So again, to sign up, you just go to marriage.theshmooze.com.go. Again, the link is on the side over there. Again, it's 6 weeks. The full price for 6 weeks is $5.99. You can sign up. If you want to do it in a few payments, you can even break it into payments. They're a little bit more money. I think it's $209 times 3 instead of the $5.99. Some more processing fees, etc. But if you feel that the $5.99 is too much, you can break it into three separate payments. And again, anything you sign up for, you have the full 6 weeks. If you're not happy, if you don't feel you've gained, if you feel this wasn't what it was promised to be, it didn't change, it didn't work, you're not happy, you contact me, you could text me, you could email, however it may be, and I will refund the full amount. I have no problem with that. I will gladly do it. I mean, I won't gladly do it because I'd be much happier if you were satisfied and you actually change your marriage. But I have no compunction, because this is not about the money. This is about the change. This is about you getting to look at things differently, act differently. If we accomplish that, it's gold. If we don't, you're right, it was a mistake. So in that sense, there is a risk. I have to admit there is a risk here. The risk is time. The time that you're going to have to put into actually working on this, understanding it. By the way, I almost guarantee that the time will be incredibly well invested. Because, first of all, most likely you're going to fundamentally change your marriage. But even if you don't, you're going to understand yourself much better. By the way, let's even say, Rahman shouldn't have, but let's even say your marriage is headed for divorce. Even if you believe that your marriage right now is headed for divorce, I highly recommend, and maybe even more, I recommend you join this course. Why? Number one, after the divorce, you're still ex-spouses. And especially if there are kids, there's never a divorce, there's always. So the more you can get along well, the better off you are. But more than that, you have a life ahead of you. And this is not only about the marriage, it's about you. Understanding you in relationships, understanding how you function. And this is a transformative process in you. So I believe the skills that you learn and the concepts that we're going to deal with are basic to your success, your happiness as a person. My goal clearly is to improve the marriage, and hopefully your marriage isn't anywhere near that point. But again, if your marriage isn't, even if it's at that point, I think you really should. You owe it to yourself and to your kids, because if you, and again, unfortunately, I deal with a lot of divorced couples, and the acrimony, it's really not a pretty scene. And if you could separate a little bit cleaner and better, everyone's a lot happier. But again, hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully we're dealing with a situation where you're going to change the marriage and really reignite, bring back the passion, learn to get rid of the stuff, and learn to change your focus. So again, to join, it's marriage.theshmooze.com.go. Again, you could just click on the link over there. Again, please write in any questions that you have. Anything, please just type it in. I'll gladly try to answer whatever I can. You can type it in, and I'll look for it over there. So if you have questions, here's a question. Okay. That question doesn't make me happy. Any other questions? Please type in any question you have. Please type it in. I'm going to answer that question, even though I don't want to, but I'm going to answer it. It's a lot of money. Is there a way to try it for a week? My answer is absolutely not. Don't do it. Don't waste your time. Don't waste my time. If you want to try for a week, go online to theshmooze.com, listen to Shurim, try things. This is about putting both feet into the fire. This is about committing to the work, committing to reading, to studying, to listening, to watching the videos. More than anything, committing to the work that you have to do within your marriage, within yourself. And if you're going to try it for a week, the answer is no. Now, again, it comes with a money-back guarantee, and I'm fine. If you put yourself into it, especially better yet, if you and your spouse together go into it, and after 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you find it's not for you, or it's not working, I have no problem. You let me know, and you'll get a full refund of everything you paid. I have no problem with that, but I don't want anyone to come in, I'll try it for a week. Because if you try it for a week, guess what? It's not going to work. Because again, we're not talking about learning new stuff. We're not, I didn't know, now I know. We're talking about transforming the way you behave, transforming the way you think. Do you understand most of your mood, most of the way you relate to the world is based on the thoughts that cross your brain? You know, there's a car magnet that's not as popular as it used to be, the Shmooze car magnet, and because the way you think becomes the way you feel, becomes who you are forever. The fundamental yesod of Musar, and by the way, it's probably 80% of our avodas Hashem, is controlling our thoughts, controlling the things that go across my conscious mind, and understanding that every thought that crosses my mind is not Torah's emes. But you see, that requires training. How many times have you gotten into a situation with your spouse, he said, she said, and before you know it, you interpreted it in a way that spun out a story, and before you knew it, you had it that she did this, he did that, who knows what. And the exercises of learning to watch your brain as you think, learning to pay attention to the way you're thinking, and learning to stop that pattern of thought and think differently takes a lot of work. It's not about information. It's not about, let me study, let me listen to a shiur, let me read a new sefer. Not at all. It's about training yourself, working. It's Musar, it's the basics of Musar, it's the basics of growth, but it requires a very real investment of energy, and it requires a certain risk. The risk is the commitment. So again, to answer the question, can you try it for a week? The answer is no. Can you jump into it? And if you're not happy, but you put your best effort and you're not satisfied, can you get a full money-back refund? Absolutely. But again, trying it for a week isn't going to work. Again, if you'd like to register, if you'd like to join me, you can go to marriage.theshmooze.com.go. There are 2 payment options. You can either do the $5.99 one-time payment option for the full course, or you can do 3 payment options of $209 each. Again, both will be on that page. If you go click over there, please feel free to put in any questions that you have. The course, again, you'll see on that page the start date of the course. If anyone is going to watch this video after, there will be a few days, there will be a time when we're going to close the cart. Meaning, once we start the course starts, and then I'm going to ask that no one join, because to be honest with you, it's a progression. It's a process. It's a transformative process. So once we start, I'm going to ask anyone who wants to start after that date to have to wait till, if we do it again, or maybe we'll do it again, we'll see. But once we begin, that's it. So if you want to join, I urge you to join. There is a little bit of time because we're not going to begin for a little while. Again, when you get to the page, you'll see the actual start date, and you'll see, you'll see if it's open. If you're watching a replay of this, then you'll see if it's closed, in which case it'll just say, hopefully we'll have another webinar in the future. Again, I'm not guaranteeing because I'm not sure, because again, this is a big deal commitment on my part, and to be honest with you, it's not what I'm supposed to be doing for a living. I mean, I love doing it because if I could help, I love doing it, but Shmooze is much bigger. I'm supposed to be dealing with a lot of other stuff. This is, unfortunately, I get involved in marriage, a lot, because it becomes such an issue. In other words, meaning it becomes such a devastating, disastrous thing. Again, as I started saying in the beginning, your marriage is the key central relationship in your life. It's going to affect everything. You could have the world, you could have wealth, you could have health, you could have everything. If your spouse and you aren't connected, you're not bonded, life is bleh. And on the other hand, you could be living in a tiny little shack, and you can have a lot of tsaros, but you have your best friend with you, you're connected, you're bonded, and it's a beautiful, beautiful experience, this thing called life. A good marriage is attainable. Hashem wants us to be happy. Hashem did not relegate good marriages, successful marriages, to a few tzaddikim. Maybe Avram Avinu, the Chazon Ish, but if the rest of us are supposed to suffer, I don't think so at all. I think the problem is understanding. The problem is understanding how a marriage should function, understanding what I'm doing, what I need to do, and understanding the mirror, understanding the techniques. Again, there's a lot of learning in this seminar. I don't want you to misunderstand. Just the tools that bond, understanding how it functions, understanding the human heart. There's a tremendous amount of wisdom, a lot of chazal, and a lot of things that are gleaned from the Sfarim, because understanding the human is not such a simple thing. Baruch Hashem, I've been studying Mussar now for 35 years, and I can't claim any great level of mastery, but I've been saying shmuzim for maybe 20 years, and a lot of times just the chachmas and Mussar, Shuvah Zatzal used to teach us the wisdom of the human heart and understanding interrelationship. It's a tremendous, tremendous avoda, understanding yourself and understanding others. And again, my goal is to be the coach. My goal is to sort of walk you by the hand through the steps. You're going to have, I guarantee, if you get into this, you're going to have a lot of ups and downs. There are going to be moments when, yes, I get it, and it's changed, and then it's going to be, oh. And it's going to require some coaching, some sort of hand-holding, some sort of like showing, what you need to do is this, maybe try this, why don't you think about this, approach it differently. There's going to be a lot of back and forth and a lot of ups and downs, but you do the work, Hashem will help. Again, if you want to join me, I welcome you. It's, again, you just go to marriage.theshmooze.com.go. Again, you can click over there. I will take another question or two. I am, to be honest with you, running out of steam, and I think you might be as well. But I'll take another question too. Please just type it in, and I'll try to get to it. If I can, I'll try maybe to respond after, if possible. But just type it in. I'll try. Here's another question. The question is, 6 weeks going to make that dramatic a difference? Now, to be honest with you, that's a very fair question. It's a very good question. Is 6 weeks going to make that dramatic a difference? And the answer is no, it will not. 6 weeks will not change the course of your marriage, but 6 weeks will change the direction. You see, 6 weeks is 6 weeks of practice, of getting used to it. You'll also have lots of notes. You'll have stuff to review. You'll have access to the material. But what you're going to have is 6 weeks of practicing of a different dynamic, practicing things. And marriages change. They don't change instantly. We human beings don't change instantly. But what happens is the cycle of the relationship starts spinning a little bit differently, a little bit up, and it takes a while. There'll be ups and downs, no question about it. And 6 weeks will not be. I do not expect one couple to come out, wow, we were miserable, now we're so happy, thank you. It's not how life works. But I do expect to have very real changes. And those changes, which are small, incremental, and slowly you change the cycle. Slowly you change the trajectory. Instead of heading down, you're heading up. Or instead of the fights being as often, they're less frequent and they're less severe. And you begin to change the way you understand your spouse, the way you relate to your spouse and understand the problems. Again, I welcome you to join me. If you'd like to learn more about marriage, the shmooze.com, it's all free there. Plenty of shiurim there and plenty of things. And by the way, the internet, Torah, anytime has plenty of shiurim. And this is not about information. This is not about learning. This is about a transformative process. If you want to be engaged and involved in really transforming and making a difference, making your marriage different than it is now, I welcome you to join me. You just go to marriage.theshmooze.com. Again, the button's on the side over there. And again, please put in any questions you have on the side. I'll try to take as many questions as I have energy, because I am starting to run kind of low. But okay, just please feel free to type your questions in. It could be directly on the subject. It could be on other subjects as well if you like. But please feel free to put them in. Okay, here's a question I see. Okay, how do you build love theoretically and practically? How do you build love? Okay, that is a very, very fine question. And I believe that is, first of all, I love to applaud. I love how do you, see, asking that question is brilliant. And if we would ask that question more, maybe you and I wouldn't have to meet. Do you understand what I'm saying? You see, we never ask that question. We ask, how can I change my spouse? How can I solve the issue? How can I get rid of this problem? How can I get my spouse to stop, whatever it may be? But can you build love? And how do you build love? We never seem to ask. But let me share with you the answer. The answer is absolutely yes, 100%. And by the way, I can prove that to you in a few ways. First of all, v'ahavta l'reacha kamocha is a mitzvah say d'oraisa. And if you're commanded to love a stranger, someone you never met before, you're commanded to love them to whatever extent, clearly it's something that your human being is capable of. Now, in a marriage, it's much more complex. On the one hand, it's infinitely easier. On the other hand, it's also often much more difficult. There are many tools that bond. And using the tools that bond is key. Appreciation, that means appreciating what my spouse does for me and dwelling on it, thinking, understanding what would it be like if I didn't have a spouse? What would my life be like? But really going through the exercise and really going through the steps of envisioning what would life be like if I was single? What would it be like if I was alone? Yes, he's a mess. Yes, but what would it be like if I didn't have him? And that process is huge. It's transformative. But appreciation has the flip side to it. Expressing appreciation. Letting my spouse know that I appreciate that which he or she does. I cannot tell you how many guys kill themselves to earn a living. And what do they get from their wife? That's all he does. He just cares about money. Now again, don't get me wrong. A husband's job is much more than just earning a living. I get that. But madam, you're living in a beautiful house. You're driving a fine car. Your kids are all dressed very well and you don't work. So appreciation has two elements to it. Appreciating what my spouse does for me and learning to express that appreciation. Now that's a basic. But that basic can make a fundamental difference in a marriage. It's not within the category of romantic love, but it sure does work. Romantic love, which again is a big part of what we work with, is a huge, huge piece of a successful marriage. Hashem gave us many tools that bond because we need them. It's not just one size fits all, and it's not just a hammer. There are many tools, and you have to use them. You have to use them in different ways, different times, different people. You have to understand what your spouse needs in each tool. But if you don't understand them and you don't use them, well, guess what? I have to be honest with you. Most people just kind of wing it. Whatever, I'm married, and it's a problem. Oh, let's solve the problem. Well, they end up where they end up. So again, if you want to kvetch, you want to complain, again, I welcome you to kvetch, complain, and you can even call me, and I'm not going to refuse the call. Although I really have a real desire to tell people from now on, I will not talk to any couple until you attend, the marriage boot camp, because you see, again, it's so effective. It's a cure as opposed to a Band-Aid. Imagine I'm going to sit with you for hours and hours and hours, putting on this Band-Aid, that Band-Aid, this Band-Aid. Oh, Rabbi, you're a great bandager. Oh, you put on, and a sling, and a cast. Oh, wonderful. And crutches. Oh, wonderful. How about curing the patient? How about dealing with the problem? That's what we're talking about. We're not talking about Band-Aids. We're not talking about finally figuring out how to get my spouse to change. Finally, Baruch Hashem, I got her to change. That's not what this is about. This is about fundamentally changing your marriage, changing the essence of your marriage, and changing the relationship, changing the way you react, figuring out why it is that it bothers you so what she does, and figuring out what you do that bothers her so, and figuring out how to stop those things from bothering, how to work things out. And that's a process. It's a transformative process. How do you build love? The answer is there are many tools, and you have to use them and slowly change the relationship. Again, I welcome you to join me. It's a 6-week marriage boot camp. It's $5.99 for the full 6 weeks. You can do it in 3 payments. It's $209 on three monthly payments, if that's easier. Again, it comes with a money-back guarantee. I don't want anybody trying it, but if you're committed to really giving it your all, to really getting into it and doing the process, and you're not happy, I'm absolutely fine writing a full refund. Again, I don't mean this in a pejorative sense, but Baruch Hashem, I don't need the money, and this is not funding the schmooze. But I do need your commitment for it to work. So if you want to give it your all and really give it a go, please join me. And again, if you find that it didn't work, let's say after 2 weeks or 4 weeks, you really put your effort in, and you find it doesn't work, it's getting it, we will part the best of friends. You send me an email, you send me a text, you call me, whatever it is, and I'll gladly refund your full amount. Whatever amount you paid, I'll gladly refund it totally without any, I have no compunctions, that's fine. But again, I think it can work. I think it can make a tremendous difference. You'll see a lot of people have had tremendous success with it. Again, if you have any other questions, please put it in the box. I will gladly try my best to get to it. Please just type in any question you have. I'll try to deal with those questions here. Okay, here's an interesting question. This is all very fine and well, but what if my spouse never has time for me? Okay, so to be honest with you, that is a very real problem. I'm not going to deny. We live in pressurized times. We live in times that we're busier than human beings ever were. And you have to fight for your marriage. You have to fight to make time for your marriage. And if you have one spouse who really never has time, it could be a problem. But sometimes you have to ask yourself, why is it that my spouse never has time for me? And what am I doing that might make it that my spouse never has time for me? I had one woman who came to me. It was a very sad situation because she described the husband as the way she described him, a bore, a moritz, like he was. I expected the worst. I mean, her description of him was okay. Anyway, I met him and I was very surprised because he was a fine mensch. He was even reasonably learned, a frum fellow, and he wasn't a total amoritz, But I like. And it took me not that long, but a little while to get to the bottom of it. Okay, here's the story. She teaches dikduk on a high school level in a very frum Beis Yaakov, and she's very medactic. And she really is a balas dikduk, and she really knows everything well. And she has a habit, a very common habit, of correcting her husband. And she once explained that whenever her husband quotes a pasuk or whatever it may be, she will correct him. And I said, like in public, yeah, in front of the kids, yeah, absolutely, in front of the married kids, She spends her life correcting him, making sure he says this right, that, make sure he does this, making sure that he's good enough and good enough. And I tried my best to explain to her, but I don't think I could. What I tried to explain to her is the reason why your husband acts the way he acts is because you are a headache to him. You're a toothache. You're an annoyance. You are not a friend. You are not a support. You're not his best friend and lover. You are a pain to him. And guess what? He doesn't want to spend any time with you. Now, I'm not excusing, and I don't know your situation, and maybe it is that you're great and wonderful and perfect, but your husband or your wife, whatever it may be, has no time. I don't know. But I have a feeling that often what happens is that things sort of spin out and, the relationship sort of weakens a little bit. And then suddenly people get very, very busy because guess what? Things are, and I tell you this, you can try it. Do I guarantee success? No one can guarantee success. I know it's worked for many, many couples. I know it works on a regular basis. When you put into that mirror a different face, when you stop the negatives and put in the positive, many times it changes things dramatically. And suddenly your spouse has time. Now, certainly if your spouse will join you in the webinar, and we'll spend a lot of time, we spend time on perspective, how important Shalom Bayis is, and how much an investment in yourself and your kids the relationship is, and how the best favor you can do your children is to have a healthy marriage. I say this all the time. If your son doesn't know every ksos, if your daughter doesn't know every Ramban and Chumash, they'll be fine citizens. But if your Shalom Bayis is rocky, guess what? The house, the very fabric of what they're living in is coming apart, and it's the most disastrous, damaging thing to a child. You have to keep in mind, especially if your kids are little, when your kids are little, you're 10 feet tall. Mommy and Tati are the center of the universe. They're bigger than big. And when they act in a way that's just so ugly, and they act in a way that's not appropriate, and certainly if they don't act loving, it's just gravity itself is being questioned. Like, what's next? And it's disastrous to children, little children, when couples fight and there's bickering and it's a horrible thing. So, can I tell you that this will cure everything? No, not every marriage can be saved or will be saved. I can tell you it's a system, it's a method that works. I can tell you, I believe it's well worth trying. Certainly if your spouse will join you, it's much more likely. Even if he or she won't, it's still very much worth your time. Again, it requires a commitment. It's a $599 commitment. That part, the financial piece, there's a money-back guarantee. And if it doesn't work, again, I'm fine and happy to refund your money. The time that you're going to put in, that part is not refundable. I can't refund your time. But I think that part will be a huge growing process. And the changes that you implement in yourself might just be enough to change your spouse and might just be enough to change your marriage. So again, if you'd like to join me, I welcome you. It's a 6-week boot camp, and you could just click on the button on the side over there. If you don't see it for some reason, it's marriage.theschmooze.com.go, G-O. You just go there and you'll have all the information. Again, in the webinar, you have the 6 weeks of the live webinar. If you're not able to make a week, you'll get the replay of it. We'll record it and send it to you. I ask you, please try your best to be at each week, because each week has not just the homework that you did during the past week, but there'll be assignments and things we'll do, actually activities during the session. And also you'll be able to ask and discuss things during the actual session. But again, if you have to miss a week, again, you'll get the replay. It is available. You could either do one payment of $5.99 or 3 payments of $2.09 each. Again, if you go to that link, it's marriage.theschmooze.com.go. And again, if you have any other questions, please feel free to put them in. I will try to take another question or two. Again, I am, to be honest, I'm really a little bit running out of space. I mean, my emotional strength, my physical strength. One thing also, once we start, it will start after, meaning there'll be a few days after this presentation, we'll be able to sign up. Once we start the actual marriage boot camp, it will be closed, meaning we're going to close it up. And once we start, then again, if we do it again in the future, you'll be given, meaning if you go to the cart and you see that it was closed, it means we started. And what you'll be told is we might start up in the future. You'll put your name there on the list, and we'll email you if I in fact do it again in the future. I guess we'll email you. If not, again, I apologize. But again, once we start it, it's 6 weeks, and it's it builds one on the other. So I really can't have people jumping in, week 2 or week 3. So if you want to join, if you feel, based on what we've discussed and based on what we talked about, if you feel that this can change, please join me. And again, I just want you to imagine for a minute that instead of focusing on the problems, imagine for a minute instead of focusing on the issues, you focused on the relationship. And imagine that you had tools. Imagine you had real tools to transform the relationship. You understood your spouse's needs, and you knew how to deliver those needs, and you began doing that. Do you see what a difference that would make in your marriage? And more than that, what if you could step back and those annoying things that your spouse, and we all got them, but those things that so annoy you about your spouse, you realize that you're the one who spins the tale. It's true, he's messy. Let me use my socks on the floor case. That's my famous one. He left his socks on the floor, and he lives again and again and again. And that's had it. I will not be stepped on again. I will not put up with this anymore. And she yelled at him for the 10,000th time. Okay, it is true that he should be neater. I never questioned that. It is true that he should change. But guess what? If he's 40 years of age and he hasn't changed till now, he ain't going to change. And she has one decision to make. She either accepts her husband as he is, socks on the floor and all, and is happy, or she suffers. Because she thinks she's going to get him to change, but guess what? She won't. But shouldn't he change? Isn't that menschlichkeit? Rabbi, wouldn't you? I agree, he should. And I should be 10 feet tall, and you should be your ideal body weight, and everybody should be perfect, but we're not. I am who I am. You mean, are you obviating all obligation to work on one? No, not at all. But it's not your job to change your spouse. You see, so many times the fights happen because how could he do that to me? He knows it's important to me, and he did it. He's doing it lahachas. And even if you're not thinking he's doing it lahachas, it bothers you so. But you're the spinner of the tale. You're the one who made the socks on the floor into an issue. And it's you who can deprogram it, who can detox it. But you see, that requires wisdom. It requires actual practical. Yeah, but it's not fair. Why should I have to? Because the same reason he puts up with you. No, he doesn't put up with me. Yes, he does. Oh, yeah, he does. And by the way, I love it. I had a woman once who was on and on about this he does wrong, and that he does wrong, and this he does wrong, and that he does wrong. And I said to Madam, it seems to me, could be you also. And by the way, she was a tough customer. Oh, was she tough? A tough cookie. So I said, Madam, could be there are some things about you, that he also has to put up with. And she said, well, that may be true, but me, I can't. Him, I could change. Me, I got to put up with, but him, I could change. Very good. So if your attitude is, I want to attend this, this marriage transformation seminar so I can transform my spouse, say Schem L'Shalom. Don't, again, I love you to come, but don't join me. Please find some other place. This transformation webinar is not about transforming your spouse. It's about transforming you. You cannot change your spouse. It's not your job to change your spouse. It's hard enough to change you. But the one thing you can change is spinning the tales that we tell ourselves about our spouse. Interpretation and reading into what he meant and what she said and what she really meant and all that stuff that we invent, which is, again, just spinning tales. That's a big thing you can change. But more than anything, once you change the relationship, you feel differently. It's a whole different environment, a whole different relationship. You feel very differently. You want to be very different. You're just not in the same place, so you don't need to spin the tales. And you learn to realize that, okay, he didn't do it to bother me. He didn't do it. So in answer to the questions, again, there are going to be issues. And by the way, I guarantee if you do all the work and you spend 6 weeks and you spend 12 weeks and you spend a year, you will not solve all the issues in a marriage. You'll never solve them because we all have stuff. But that's the great secret. It's not about being perfect human beings. A successful marriage is not about a perfect man and a perfect wife. We're all imperfect. It's about learning to accept each other, learning to embrace each other, and learning to work with each other, learning to work on the relationship, learn to accept that my spouse isn't perfect, and learning how not to let it bother me as I hope it doesn't bother my spouse what I do, etc., and learning to improve the relationship. To join me, please go to marriage.theshmooze.com.go. Again, if you have another question, please feel free to put it in on the side. I will try. Again, the full marriage, the 6-week webinar is $599. You could do 3 payments of $209 each. Again, it does come with a complete money-back guarantee. If at any time during the 6 weeks you feel you did not get your money's worth, you feel it wasn't worth it, or whatever, you want to back out, my pleasure. Just let me know, and I'll gladly refund the full amount. Again, all I ask is that you put in a sincere effort, that you really use it, because, again, that's the only way it's going to work. Again, this is not about information. It's about transforming. It's about changing. Please, again, if you have any questions, please feel free to put it into the box. I'm going to look for any last questions or thoughts. If you do have, I'll gladly try to deal with it. That's an interesting question. Okay. The question is, are habits really that easy to break? Okay, so let me be blunt. Habits are very, very hard to break. And much of your reaction to your spouse and your spouse's reaction to you is habitual. And that's exactly the point. You see, that's why you cannot study this information. That's why if you attend 100,000 lectures from today until Mashiach comes along after, you're not going to change. Because habits are very, very difficult to change. But that's the process. It's a growth process, step by step, but it's transformative. And that's why we're doing exercises, and that's why we do things incrementally, step by step, little by little. But it's not about information. It's about change. Change requires real work. It's what I call Musar B'Spilus, but it's Musar, Chachmas Musar, and it's also Musar in the real world, meaning it's implementing the systems, implementing the techniques, implementing the tools. And yes, you're right, habits are not easy to change at all, but it's possible. And more than anything, it's little changes. You see, once you change a little bit, your spouse changes a little bit. Then you change a little, and she changes a little, and suddenly you're in a different place. Not everything is beautiful, rose gardens all day long, but it's a different place. The environment, the climate of the relationship is different. And yes, I agree, habits are really hard to change. And that's why the work we do is it's very real. It's not about information, it's about transformation. So again, can I guarantee success? Absolutely not. And again, maybe that's a good reason for the money back guarantee alone, just for that reason, because again, I don't want anybody having time. Rabbi, I put in my best effort and it didn't work. I cannot guarantee success. I know this works. I know there's a system. Can I guarantee? Oh, believe me, I can't guarantee anything. First of all, I can't guarantee I'll be here tomorrow morning, right? So that's not it's certainly beyond my capacity. But I cannot guarantee that this will work. I can guarantee that it's a system, it's a method, it's step by step, it's a program, it's worked out. It's worked for many, many others. Many people have implemented in a very successful manner. will it work for every marriage? Listen, who knows? I certainly can. I know that it's a very, very wise approach. I know what it is. It's engaging. I use that word emotional intelligence and really what I mean by that is not so much in the way that Daniel Goleman uses it, as much as being intelligent about your emotions. Emotions are not intelligent. Emotions are dumb. Emotions are just reactions. They're just emotions. But learning your emotions and learning what makes your emotions and learning how to change your emotions and what triggers you and more than anything, what triggers your spouse and how to build the bond of love and how to connect and how to feel attachment and how to build that requires a lot of intelligence. So a lot of the work, don't get me wrong, it's not all like exercise or we're going to do weightlifting. A lot of it is information, but the information is focused on transforming. It's information that's focused on, okay, Lamaisa, what does this mean to you? How are you going to do it? And more than that, the real work is for you. For me, I'm the coach. Again, I present the ideas and I deal with issues and I respond and et cetera. But the work is you. You're the one who has to do the exercises. You're the one who has to do the assignments. You're the one who has to, obviously the reading and the audios and the videos, that's obvious. But I mean more than that. The actual exercises, the actual going through the actual routines, that's you, that's not me. And again, does it work for everyone? No, but it does have a very good shot of success. Again, I welcome you to join me at marriage.theshmooze.com.go. It's $599 for the full 6-week boot camp, $209 on 3 monthly payments if that's easier. Again, it comes with a money-back guarantee. I've said that quite a number of times already, and I do mean it. And again, if you want to give it your all and really give it an effort and you're not sure, I'm okay. I understand. Try it. But again, only if you're really committed. The only thing I ask is, I don't want anybody just let me audit it. Let me sort of I'll judge it after. If you're committed to giving it your all, if you're committed to really putting yourself into it, I'm absolutely fine with your knowing and my knowing that if it doesn't work, you're not satisfied, I will gladly refund your full amount. Again, all I ask is that there be a real commitment, that you really commit to doing it and you really commit to doing the work. If it doesn't work, listen, I'm fine with it. And really, I guess that's what it boils down to. What it boils down to is one question. Do you see this making a difference? Do you see these things changing the way you and your spouse relate to each other? Do you see that if you began to understand the world from your spouse's eyes, if you began to climb into her world or his world, and you began to relate to things, if you could be kind of a fly in the wall, but a fly inside the brain and hear the tape, do you see how that can make a huge difference? Now, it's difficult to be in the brain of someone else, but your spouse is going to help you. And done together, it's much more effective. Because while my job, I guess, is to be the sort of the guide, but I'm really directing, it's self-guided, it's really you who are going to do the work together with your spouse. And a lot of work is trying for you to understand your spouse, for your spouse to understand his or herself, and work on it together. So again, I welcome you to join me again. It's 6 weeks. And once the boot camp begins, we're going to close it out. So, if you're interested, if you see these things changing a marriage, I urge you, join me. Again, if you feel you didn't get your money's worth, didn't work, okay, you back out. But again, I think it can make a tremendous difference. I've seen it and on time after time, and I think it can be very successful. Again, the risk is that you're going to spend time, but the time is growth-oriented. It's a lot of tremendous information and knowledge and can make a real difference. If you do have a question or two, please put it in. I'll gladly take. There's still a few questions I still see left. I can't say I'm going to take everyone because, to be honest with you, it's getting a little late. I'm getting a little tired, to be very blunt. But please feel free. If you want to join me, again, it's the 6 week starts. Once it starts, it begins. So if you feel that this could help, you can go to to marriage.theshmooze.com.go. And again, you'll see all the information there. And please feel free to join me. If you do have any questions, you can email me, Rebbe@theshmooze.com, REBBE @theshmooze.com, REBBE.theshmooze.com. And again, if you have a question or two, please feel free to put it in on the right side. I will try to answer a few more questions. Right. Okay. How does this compare to marriage therapy? That's a difficult question to answer because, to be very blunt, marriage therapy typically fails. And I'm not faulting marriage therapists. Many times, if not most of the time, people come to marriage therapists when it's way too late. But I will tell you that there's a huge disadvantage that a marriage therapist has. And that is the couple are coming in a contentious state. He, she. And guess what? It's very difficult to untwine that. And the goal here is to change the relationship. The goal here is really some of the work is going to be alone, separate, not together. I certainly, by the way, even when I bring couples into my office, I don't bring them in together, rarely, even for a short period, because I don't want no thanks. So the work here really is in your world, in your mind. Now, a lot of the work is understanding your spouse, and some of that you're going to have to ask your spouse and introduce, and you have discussions, etc., about it. But the work is in your world. And it's really work, what I call, it's not Band-Aids. See, a lot of times marriage therapists, what they're doing is they're putting on Band-Aids and just sort of like helping the, stop the bleeding, or, put on a splint so the patient doesn't damage herself anymore. But you see, this is not about that. Again, obviously we want to stop the fights, we want to stop the misunderstandings, we want to stop the hurt feelings, but it's much more than that. It's about building the relationship, about connecting, about bonding, about learning a spouse, about really connecting in a fundamental manner. All right, so again, I welcome you to join me, marriage.theshmooze.com.go. You could just click over there. Again, I urge you, please, to, if you feel that you really want to put an effort and you really want to potentially change your marriage, I urge you to join me. The only thing I ask is that be an earnest and honest effort, that it be real. Again, if you tried and it didn't go, let's say you tried for 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and you really feel it didn't go, it didn't work, I will gladly refund every penny. I have no problem with that. But again, I think, all I ask is that you commit to it, that you really put, sincere effort. It has been a pleasure. In any case, I certainly welcome you to come to theshmooze.com at any time and enjoy. All the shurim there are free. Again, if you feel in the next day or two that you want to come to the join me in the marriage boot camp, first of all, I urge you, if you're toying and you're not sure, I think you owe it to yourself. You see, really, it boils down to one thing. Your marriage is the center key of everything. And if you knew that you could change your marriage, what effort would it be worth? Is there anybody who wouldn't put in the real, bona fide, sincere effort to change? I mean, could you imagine your marriage? This is the person you live with. This is the person you go to sleep with. This is the person you get up at night. This is the person you raise your kid. This is your center key. Everything that you're going to do for the rest of your life is going to involve this person on some level. And it could either be a beautiful, flourishing relationship, or it could be just mediocre, or sometimes even worse. And if you know that there's a way to change it, there's a way to transform it, a way to make things different, will it instantly? No, nothing's going to instantly change, but it's going to change things. You'll react differently. She'll react differently. Things will change. A cycle of relationship change. It goes in a little different direction. And if you knew that there was a way that you could change it, how could you not do it? How could you not say, I'm in? And if you tell me, well, come on, Rabbi, it's a lot of money. I get it. I understand. It really should have been $3,000. Honestly, you go online, you could look. You'll see many marriage courses, certainly many online courses for way more than that. And I believe that's the actual value, but that was too much. But I sincerely believe also that if we don't have this level of commitment, it's not going to work. If I were to give these shurim and make them available, which is much easier for me, and I love to do it because, again, I know automatically, once we charge, it cuts down the traffic by 90%. But you also have to understand it would never work. The only way it works is if you're in it. And the only way you're in it is if you commit. So if you feel, there's only one question, I believe. Do you see this potentially working? If you see this potentially working, I urge you to jump in with both feet. Again, it's not a big risk because, again, you're not happy with it. You just let me know and you're out, done. And I'll refund the full amount. I have no problem with that. But again, if you see it potentially changing your marriage, I urge you to stop, again, excuse me saying it this way, stop fetching, stop complaining, stop saying she, he, she, just let's go. Here's a program, here's a system. I'm telling you, it works. Try it. Okay, I thank you very much, and I wish you much, much atzlacha. Again, if you want to join me, it's marriage.theshmooze.com.go, and I wish you much, much bracha, mazel, and atzlacha throughout life.